Did you know? Judd Apatow, one of the main creative forces behind Freaks and Geeks, he saw the show as his chance to avenge every nerd who ever got picked on in high school. He wasn't just making a series, he was crafting a kind of therapy session for anyone who'd been shoved into a locker. Many storylines were inspired directly by the writer's own adolescent scars. Those deeply awkward first kisses, botched parties, and cringe-inducing social experiments that still haunt us. In a sense, Freaks and Geeks was payback. NBC wanted laughs, not acne. Network executives expected a teen comedy in the style of Saved by the Bell. What they got instead was pimples, awkward silences, and teenagers who actually looked like teenagers. This freaked NBC out. They asked producers to make the characters cooler and more aspirational. The creators responded by doubling down on awkward braces, unflattering sweaters, and plotlines about getting high in your basement. Basically, NBC wanted a glossy yearbook photo, and the show handed them the crumpled candid shot where your eyes are half closed. Jason Segel played drums on set. Jason Segel, who played the hopelessly love-struck Nick Andopoulos, wasn't just faking his drum obsession. He really did spend hours pounding on that massive 29-piece drum kit. His epic Rush solos were authentic and also ear-shattering for everyone else on set. This wasn't just character work. Segel was channeling his real teenage dream of becoming a rock star. Too bad in the show, his girlfriend dumped him because his music career consisted of bad drum solos and no actual gigs. The chemistry between Seth Rogen and Franco was real. Before they became the Pineapple Express duo, Seth Rogen and James Franco bonded on Freaks and Geeks as awkward teens fumbling their way through life. Off-screen, they were just as inseparable, constantly joking around, and by most accounts, driving the adults on set insane. Rogen was literally a teenager when hired, and he later admitted he barely knew how to act. He was basically just being himself. That raw awkwardness was 100% authentic Seth. Elizabeth Jean Phillips broke James Franco's nose. In one of the show's many physical comedy mishaps, Phillips accidentally broke James Franco's nose while filming a scene. Apparently, Franco was trying to pull off some macho move, and Phillips' real-life strength delivered a little too much realism. He walked away with a busted nose, proving that method acting sometimes hurts. And honestly, isn't that the most Kim Kelly thing ever? The extras were real high school kids. Rather than hiring polished Hollywood extras, the show filled its hallways with real high school kids from around the area. That's why the background feels so authentic. Awkward kids in thrift store clothes, slouching down the hallway like they desperately want to disappear. Freaks and Geeks nailed the background noise of adolescence. Gum chewing, note passing, and the perpetual fear of tripping in front of everyone. VHS saved the show's legacy. When the show got axed after just 18 episodes, it could have easily disappeared forever like many other short-lived series. But obsessive fans recorded episodes on VHS and swapped them like contraband. For years, the bootleg tapes kept the series alive until a cult following demanded a DVD release. In other words, without those early tape trading nerds, Freaks and Geeks might have ended up as just another forgotten show in NBC's dumpster. The teachers were based on real people. Those quirky, often depressing teachers weren't just TV stereotypes. They were ripped straight from the writer's memories. Paul Feig, the show's creator, admitted that Mr. Rosso, the overly cool guidance counselor, was basically an exaggerated version of his own school counselor who desperately wanted to connect with students. Meanwhile, the gym teacher who seemed to hate life actually came from real life too. Basically, if you were staff at Paul Feig's old high school, congrats. You got immortalized, flaws and all. The dance scene took all night to nail. One of the most iconic moments in the pilot was the school dance, where Sam Weir awkwardly grooves to Styx's Come Sail Away. That wasn't just a quick shoot, it was an all-night marathon of cringe. The poor actor John Francis Daley had to keep dancing, take after take, while extras looked on. Imagine reliving your most embarrassing high school dance for hours under hot stage lights. The authenticity of his awkwardness was totally justified.
Come on, no way.
It's true. When I heard him play at Cobo Hall.
Cancelled, but not forgotten. Okay, you knew cancellation had to come up, but here's the twist. The cast and crew knew they were doomed early on. NBC moved the show around the schedule, often without warning, and refused to promote it properly. By the time they aired episodes out of order, even the actors were joking that the show had an expiration date shorter than milk. Luckily, that short run gave it cult classic immortality, because sometimes dying young makes you legendary. Dave Grohl and the soundtrack. The show was legendary for its authentic soundtrack. But music rights were a nightmare. Paul Feig and Judd Apatow fought hard to use the actual tracks teens obsessed over in 1980. At one point, they even tried to clear a Nirvana-related track, posthumous, of course, because Feig was a massive fan. And the cost? Astronomical. NBC executives were practically choking when they saw the music licensing bills. But Feig insisted. No cheesy sound-alike tracks, no watered-down TV-friendly covers, just the real stuff. The result? One of the most expensive teen soundtracks ever, but also one of the most authentic. Improvisation was encouraged, especially from the kids. A lot of what made the show feel so raw and relatable was the freedom given to its actors. Paul Feig and Judd Apatow encouraged improvisation, particularly from Martin Starr, Bill Haverchuck, and Seth Rogen. That deadpan humor from Starr? Half of it wasn't even in the script. Rogen's dry delivery also came from just being Rogen. In fact, some of the show's most iconic awkward pauses weren't scripted. They were the kids just running out of things to say, which is hilariously perfect for teens. They actually drank fake beer. In one memorable episode, the characters experiment with beer. The actors weren't sipping water or soda disguised in red cups. They had to drink a nasty concoction made to mimic flat beer. The taste was reportedly awful, and some actors gagged between takes. But Feig insisted on realism. The point was to capture how gross and disappointing underage drinking really feels the first time. So if you saw disgust on their faces, that wasn't acting. Paul Feig slipped in his own nerdy obsessions. Feig himself was a real-life geek, and he snuck in bits of his own teen obsessions, like Dungeons and Dragons. For example, that famous episode where the geeks recruit Daniel DeSario into their campaign was totally pulled from Feig's past. He wanted to show that geek culture could be surprisingly inclusive if you gave it a chance. Ironically, that episode became one of the most beloved, even converting some freak viewers into lifelong D&D players.
Hey, nice threads.
Nice voice.
Linda Cardellini beat out a future big star. Linda Cardellini landed the lead role of Lindsay Weir after an intense audition process. But she wasn't the only recognizable face vying for the part. Other actresses who auditioned included future stars who would go on to dominate TV in the 2000s. Some reports even mention Elizabeth Phillips, originally reading for Lindsay before ending up as Kim Kelly. Cardellini nailed it with her mix of smart, rebellious, and awkward. All traits Feig felt embodied his vision of the show's heart. And honestly, can you imagine anyone else as Lindsay now? Not a chance. The internet helped save its reputation. Back in 1999 to 2000, the internet wasn't the juggernaut it is today, but early message boards became rallying grounds for devastated fans. Sites like Ain't It Cool News and various GeoCities fan pages kept the flame alive after cancellation. This was one of the first times a fan movement online really pushed to resurrect a canceled show. It didn't bring Freaks and Geeks back, but it set a precedent for future fan campaigns. Think Firefly, Veronica Mars, or even Community. Martin Starr thought he'd ruined his career. Martin Starr was only 16 when the show ended. After cancellation, he genuinely thought he'd blown his chance at acting. He later admitted in interviews that he assumed Hollywood was done with him. But Starr ended up becoming a key player in the Apatow comedy universe. Turns out being the awkward geek was the best long-term investment he could have made. Costumes came straight from thrift stores. Unlike most TV productions, which buy or custom-make wardrobes, Freaks and Geeks outfitted its cast in authentic thrift store clothes. They wanted mismatched patterns, ill-fitting jeans, and jackets that looked like they'd been handed down from an older sibling. Nothing was styled for TV. This not only saved money, but it also added to the raw realism. Because honestly, who had perfectly tailored outfits in high school unless you were rich? James Franco and his role. James Franco was known for taking his role as Daniel DeSario a bit intensely. He wanted to fully embody the bad boy image, which sometimes translated to staying in character between takes. Rumor has it he once climbed onto the school set's roof during filming and refused to come down, insisting it's something Daniel would do. The crew was not amused, but it definitely confirmed Franco's commitment to being the brooding rebel of the group. The DVD box set was a labor of love. It took years for Freaks and Geeks to get an official DVD release because of, you guessed it, those expensive music rights. Fans had been begging, but no studio wanted to cough up the licensing fees. Finally, the bigwig stepped in and made it happen in 2004, paying for almost all of the original music to stay intact. The box set came loaded with extras, commentary tracks, and behind-the-scenes goodies, making it one of the most beloved cult DVD releases of all time. Without it, the show might not have reached the new generations of fans it has today.